Hello, my name is Carmel Sawbury and this is the Kindness Code. And today we have one of our special guest episodes, and this is a very, very special guest, Louise Allen, because her CV and what she has achieved as a care, well, not even as a care leaver, just what she's achieved is amazing, and she's a care leaver, which is unbelievable. She's a Sunday Times bestselling author. 8 titles, or I think it's about 15, isn't it, Louise?
It's 13 out and another 5 on the way in progress.
And there's a lovely hybrid stories. We're based in a true story, but kind of anonymised enough that it's not about anyone. But they are beautiful, beautiful books that make people truly understand what it's like, all the facets of care leaving. She's also a foster carer, an amazing artist. She's a founder and CEO of Spark Sisterhood, a charity supporting girls leaving care, which I think is amazing because there's no support for these kids when they leave. Care experience, forcibly adopted in the 60s or 70s, ran away from home, abusive adoptive parents. She's on the all-parliamentary group and campaigns for foster care training. And something I'm really excited about hearing about is she spent 5 years developing a program on nervous system regulation for adults working with traumatised children. Okay. So one of the most credible voices in the UK talking about fostering. Again, Louise, truly, truly remarkable, everything that you've achieved, and that's even without a pretty horrific first 15 years. So welcome. How would you introduce yourself?
Just Louise.
After I just kind of listened to the entire CV.
Louise, I don't know, really. Louise, foster carer, author, artist? I don't know.
You really identify with the creative side, don't you? And actually before you were an author, as a child, your drawing and your artistry was something that gave you confidence, but something that gave you safety as well, I think, wasn't it?
Absolutely, it still does. I have an urgent need to create almost every day, and if I don't, and where I am sitting looking at you, to my left are loads of drawings and sketchbooks and paints and materials where I go to all the time. I think I didn't realise as a child, obviously we didn't at the time, but I think I put myself unknowingly through a completely therapeutic, supportive network with my art, with my love of animals, with the fact I love being outside. I used to do guerrilla gardening in the fields in the local area. I just loved growing things. Not a clue that it was relevant. I just loved doing it, and I've created art. And I actually think and I used to love writing, even though I couldn't write. I think those activities are crucial to anyone, but particularly to people who come and experience and come through trauma.
The whole creative side, I was one of those kids. I was quite academic and good at sport, but told I couldn't draw. And only a few years ago, I did an art class, and guess what?
You could.
If you taught, you can do it. Yeah. And it is 3 hours would go by in a flash. It was deeply that mindfulness and absolutely amazing. But so intrigued that you just did it as a kid, because you had a fairly unpleasant adoptive parents, didn't you, who were deeply abusive?
Well, I think, ironically, they provided me with materials to keep me quiet and out of the way.
Oh, so we weren't good. She's been quiet. She's in a room drawing. We're okay. And
Exactly. My adopted dad used to come home from work with reams of that. Do you remember that old computer paper with the?
Oh yeah, and had all the holes down the side. Everyone who's listening, we're showing our age here.
Just used to give me a box of that and some felt tip pens, and I absolutely I still love felt tip pens. They make me go all nostalgic. I just used to just constantly create.
Did you all line them up in the right colours?
Always. Until I didn't. I did, and then I went through a phase of complete chaos, which I really was obviously my creative release. But it just gives them materials. I mean, I have all the children that we foster. Every social worker said, I don't know, I think it's extraordinary that all the children you foster are so creative and good at art. And I say, it's not by design, and we haven't matched them. What happens is we make stuff visible for them. The environment is creative, and it's part of the oxygen in our home is creativity. So they just crack on.
Because I've seen a video of you in your home that's super creative. So it's in the air, and it's what we do. We be creative. More pictures are going up in my home for sure. All the kids' artwork. We have got some, but I think, this whole idea that just show them and everything. So, well, I've got all my questions, Louise. We've gone completely off track in the first 3.5 minutes, but this is good. I knew this would be our convo. So you've had a 360 experience of foster care and the care system and being a care leaver. Just touch on that, what it means and everything you've done in that space.
Well, the growing up in care, what my background was, it was a forced adoption because my father was quite a well-known paedophile. So I'm the result of his work. That's another story, especially as I met him 2.5 years ago when he was 92. But there were 16, I think, versions of me, male and female, and we were all called Mary, and all the boys were called William. That's another story for another day. I know, I'm looking at your face, you go, whoa.
Yeah, it's just, and this is the second time I've heard it, and it's still just as shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking. It is shocking. So, and I think because I was a little dark, I'm very olive. My mother she didn't realise until I discovered it, half Italian, or she was Italian, and my father was also very dark. So, in the late 60s in Oxford, I had a complete profile to be quickly removed and adopted and got out of the way. So I was forced adopted. So my mother was still a child, I think, and they took her away, saying, "Oh, I've got a lovely home." But the family I was eventually adopted, were already on the radar for the cruelty that they were submitting, actually carrying out on another adopted child, a little boy who was 2 years older than me. They had a birth son who they treated like a god, but there was such a shortage. This is the trouble. There's a shortage of foster carers now, which really, really makes me anxious. So they kind of, I think that I wasn't blonde haired and blue eyed. I am blue eyed actually, but I didn't have the blonde hair. But they quickly signed me off against all the advice of the guardian ad litem or the social workers. I have it in my files. I even have their handwritten notes about, please don't do this. This is going to be bad. Don't let it happen. And then when I was 2, I was adopted. Out the way, done. And then, of course, when you're adopted, you don't get the social worker contact that you do as a foster child. So as a foster child, you're still connected deeply to the system, and the children are protected by the system where all that went. So they carry, she was unwell. She was mentally unwell. And that is another story, because I don't entirely blame her for any of that because of her story. You see, what you learn about children in care is it's not just our story. It's the story of the people all around us. We're just part of the story, but we become, if you like, the issue and the problem. So I ended up being adopted, and then sort of occasionally bunged into a foster placement temporarily when she would drive me to woods and, and abandon me and leave me there. She would leave me in town in the shops, and I had to kind of figure out. People were constantly taking me home. I was getting in people's cars, and they were, fortunately, most of them were quite nice, but they would take me home. So I think we had a bit of a reputation going on. And then my other adopted brother, who she was incredibly physically cruel to. Wasn't too physically cruel to me because I was pretty, and I was like a little mascot. I'd be stopped in the street and people would touch my hair and say, "Oh, isn't she pretty?" And that made her feel good. But my brother was covered in bruises and belt marks and all sorts of things. And then suddenly one day he went. No explanation, no nothing. My ally, my friend was gone. And all I remember was looking out the winter, looking out the curtains and watching the car go out the drive with the blinker turning right. And I never saw him again until about 17 years ago we met up. So that was it. And then I was told immediately, you misbehave. She would always put it on. A lot of people do this in children in care. If you misbehave, that's going to happen to you. And of course, a child, I had been listening to her saying, if you don't behave, you're going back to where you came from. I had no idea where I came from, but you believe that it will be terrible. So she would control me with threatening to remove me, when actually, if I had been removed, it might have been a better story. But they left me there, knowing what they knew about the treatment of my brother.
So your brother had been taken away because of the abuse?
Yeah. And they left me there with no explanation, no nothing. And of course, she was also trying to. She used to think of us. Her philosophy was this: if I benchmark it with, she used to say, "Happy children are spoilt children." That was her philosophy. So if we were happy, then she was failing because we were spoiled. So she would say, every time we laughed, she'd say, "You're spoiled." Or she'd regularly say, "I'm going to kill you in a minute." That was one of the lovely things she used to say. But before he went away, and I think this is partly why he went away, she took it upon herself, without consulting the children's department, as it was called then, to send us back to where we came from, because she'd had enough of us. So, and she wanted to focus just on her birth son, who we used to call Prince, and just get rid of us. So she thought, and she was into animals and things. We had a bit of a small holding. So she thought that if we connected with our birth family, we bonded, she could just send us back. It didn't work like that. So she found his birth family in Oxford and then sort of sent him back. But they raised the alarm, and I think that's one of the reasons he was removed. But she also found my birth family. And my birth family, as I've already alluded you to, was my birth father was incredibly dodgy. And my birth mother was very vulnerable, and still to this day, even though she's in the 70s, is very much a victim of early grooming. She can't believe she was groomed. She just says she was made to feel special, i.e. grooming. So she actually drove me. She had spent a lot of time driving around Oxfordshire, finding him, met him, and tried to create a relationship with my father to take me. He was on marriage 5 or 3, 4, I don't know then. He had his own children as well as all us spares. And he wasn't really into that. So then she'd targeted my birth mother's family, who was an only child. And those were the children the girls that he targeted with only children. So that he then became friends with the family, and that was his way into having constant access to the children. He was like a very special uncle. And so one day she drove me to a place just outside Oxford, a market town, and to a house. It was a large council house on an estate, a proper 1920s, 30s, you know the sort. Mm-hmm. And I found myself, she said, "Go to that front." She gave me a carrier bag, and I had a note in my hand, and she said, "Go and knock on that door." So I always did. I was about 7. I always did what I was told because I was terrified of her. My other brother was non-compliant. He was quite rebellious. I was so compliant. I was a complete people pleaser. And so I went and knocked on the door, and this old man opened the door. Well, he might not have been that old, but to me he looked like 120. And I said, "Hello," and I handed him the note, but she'd gone. She'd driven off. So I'm there with this man who was my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who read the note, looked at me, and then he just grabbed me by the arm and ushered me round from the side of the house into the back garden and sat me in the back garden, went through the back door, and then my grandmother, who was very short, I remember, very tiny, just looked at me out the window. They brought out a plastic beaker of orange squash and left me there. And then within about 2 hours, I was just sat there by myself. 2 hours, some social workers turned up, and then I was in the car going off and spent the night in a foster placement. Then I was sent back, and this was a kind of pattern.
The whole being sent back, when they'd called the alarm on your brother, and a woman your adoptive mother just drops you off somewhere, and then.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping times obviously have changed, although there's still.
I don't know.
There was still lots of stories coming out, but just unbelievable. And you ended up running away when you were 15.
Yes, I did. I did. Because when you are a child, you think that's your normal. But it feels suffocating. It feels wrong. I mean, she was physically, because after she introduced me to my mother, and she wanted me to go back. Now my mother was very young, and she was already getting divorced, and she had a couple of kids, and she didn't want me, and her husband didn't want me. But she was trying to get rid of me, and because she had told me that, "Oh, you were just like her. Oh, you look like her. Oh, yeah, you were so like her. You were so like her." She would kind of market them. PR. And there was a song I think it was by Olivia Newton-John at the time, called Sam. Now, my father was called Sam, and she used to sing Sam to me all the time and just smile at me and go, "That's your dad. That's your dad." She would try and sell the idea to me. It was perverse. And when you're little, you just go, "Oh, okay." And she was very physically very brutal to me because I wrote a letter to my birth mother because children aren't stupid. So one day we had a social worker around or something, and she had left her file open while they were going to look at something, and I looked at it and I memorized the address of my birth mother. I scrolled. Oh, we're very clever children. Never underestimate a child. And I memorized it. And then later I stole some paper. I don't know whether you remember the blue Basden bond note paper that, used to have a little,
Very fine.
yeah. And I stole a sheet of that. And I stole 10p, 20p. And I snuck out the house and went to the local post office and got a stamp. And then I wrote a note. And I wrote in my note, which I have a copy of in my file, which is actually in one of my books, verbatim, is that now I read it and I cry, and anyone that reads it just cries. It is a very polite note to my birth mother saying, "Please, can you help me? Please, can you help me, Mum? Because Mum doesn't like me. Mum doesn't want me, Mum." And then she got, and that is after she got my birth mother to actually live with us for a bit. She came to stay with us for about a month. And I pulled my eyelashes out, my hair out, my arm hair out, my eyebrows out, because I could not say the word mum. Because I had to, because I was very polite and shy and very, very compliant. So in order to have a conversation, even to say, "Can I have a drink?" or whatever, I couldn't use the word mum. So I had to, in my head, think of whole ways of having a conversation that didn't offend or wasn't rude to either of them. And I pulled everything out. I looked like something from the Muppets. I had like a frog. And I remember both women looking at me and going, "There's something wrong with that girl." Yes, it was them. But they could not, they still didn't have either of them because they were both narcissists. They'd both been sexually abused themselves, both of them, at the age of 12. And they were both trapped mentally and emotionally in older women's bodies, but were stuck as children. They're both prolific sulkers. And when I say prolific sulkers, you know that army, turn your back. Both mothers would not speak to me for days at a time if they were angry about something else. The freezer broke, or it rained, or whatever. They would target me and sulk like children. So I was failing dramatically at school. I really wasn't going to school. I mean, she kept me off a lot because I was too bright. And I showed up her son, who was 7 years older than me. So she kept me off. And she did say to me a few times, "I only adopted you so you would marry him and look after me."
Okay, that's not weird. Sorry.
I know. I've heard so much weird, I can't tell you. So I was like, "Well, that's not really my plan." So at 15, I was really into music, and I lived in Oxford. So I didn't go to school. I would spend my time walking around the Ashmolean Museum, the Pitt Rivers Museum, the Museum of Modern Art. I'd found a vegan cafe that were very friendly, and they'd let me sit with a 1 tea bag of green tea for about an hour. They never questioned me, they just let me sit there. And I just quietly educated myself. I became very interested in ancient tribal behaviour, which is why I went to the Pitt Rivers, which is an amazing museum in Oxford. I was there every day. They even gave me a chair when they saw me so I could sketch the shrunken heads, and I could sketch the artefacts. I was literally part of the furniture. No one ever questioned me because I was always very quiet, always very polite, never a bother. And then I was being physically abused at home and mentally. No one could keep a track on me. No one could, work out what was going on because I wasn't going to school. I couldn't stay at school because I'd been kept off so much. So I was just this kind of roaming 14-year-old that really got into music, and I became a punk. One day on the way home from town, there was an advert in the shop window of a hairdresser saying models needed to practice. So went in there and had a free haircut. I had a pink Mohican. So I walked home.
Surprise.
And I walked home and oh, they went crazy. And then that was my way of exiting. So the pink Mohican didn't last long. It was high maintenance, and then the hair all changed and became just backcomb Susie Sue hair. But they were very violent towards me, and if I came in, and she just laid into me. And one day, I came in at 10 o'clock. I'd been to see a reggae band. I was really into reggae. In Oxford, and I'd got back because she'd always, rather when things were naturally finished at 11, she would say come back at 9:30 or 10, like a real killjoy. Never any bus fare, never any help, never a lift. I have to walk home in the dark on my own. So I was like 10 minutes late, and I knocked on the door. I never had a key. I could never be trusted. They always said I'd run off with the silver. They didn't have any silver, but they never trust. I always was told I was a liar. I was always told I couldn't be trusted, and you end up believing it. It took me years to trust myself, to not do something wrong. And then I was late, knocked at the door, and she pulled me by the arm and said, "You little whore, you little this, you little whatever." And then the golden boy has decided he was the man of the house now. So he dragged me in, and he was kicking me, and he smashed my head on the sink, and he was very violent. And it was like she was watching a wrestling match. She was cheering on from the side, go on, get her, get her. And I was rolled up in a ball. I had been working at a fruit and veg shop in Oxford. So I'd been saving money quietly. So I went upstairs after they'd finished what they did with me. I went upstairs and very quietly, I could hear the television, and I packed a little bag. I had a little army bag with CND badges and all the rest of it on. And I packed it and I just left. And I had a broken hip, but I didn't know it was broken. And I walked 5-6 miles to Oxford Station with my money, very little money, and I got the next train, and it was to Portsmouth, and that's where I lived for 30 years. I did go back over time, but it took a long time. But it was insane. They forced me, and I loved living in Oxford, but I walked away from all my friends, everything I knew, everything I loved, to be safe. And it was horrendous, and you don't realise, because your children are in survival mode, and you don't realise, you don't have reflection time to understand what's just happened to you. You just know it was wrong, and you know it hurt, but you don't have time you don't have any benchmarking, so you just try and figure it out. So I was...
Social services, like no one, your teachers, no one was validating what was happening to you. So why would you think it was any different? Because
exactly.
it was the only thing you knew. And with no adults, there's no teachers or no one saying...
No, they just saw me as a skiver. I was good at art, but no one said, "Are you okay? Is there something going on?" I had meetings at school because I wasn't there. So they called me into school once, and I just remember a room full of adults with lanyards on saying to me, "Where do you go, Louise, in the day?" And I just thought, I'm not telling you where I go.
Because it was your safe place, it was your happy place, wasn't it?
Most children, when we lived in Oxford, they were truancy officers. They could never find me. Most children who ran off from school would go to the precinct.
They're not going to the art museums, are they?
Go to the precinct, get fags, smoke, get drugs, cause trouble. Not me. I was on my own. And I'd sit in the university parks where the academics used to go. No one ever questioned me. Having an amazing philosophical conversation with Russian academics, with Polish academics. I had an education. I just didn't have a place to have it. So I was hungry for knowledge, absolutely hungry, trying to work it all out.
What intrigues me is I've spoken to quite a few care leavers in the last few months and listened to the stories, and actually so many of the ones that I'm speaking to are the ones that have survived and thrived because that's why they're on LinkedIn and that's how I can reach out and that's why they're speaking in public. And nearly all of them have got a sibling who really, really didn't make it or very nearly didn't make it. And I'm so intrigued as to, and I guess a lot of it's genetic. It's just nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
But why some of these people who are now in the public space giving voice to care leavers, why did you thrive? Why were you one of the ones that ended up writing 15 books and getting degrees and being an artist and being an absolute advocate for all these things? How did you become that person?
Because I knew what the alternative to that was, and I wouldn't let them win. Because I was told my destiny by my teachers, I didn't want to be near social workers. I completely went under the radar when I left, and I had no money. So I had to become entrepreneurial to survive. So I set up an ironing business. I took on people's ironing. I worked as a chambermaid. I did anything to get some cash. And I felt like, I'd always felt like an outsider. And people always think that being an outsider is a terrible, terrible thing. But when you're an outsider, you have this wonderful opportunity to look in. And sometimes when you look in, it's not what you want. So I created a life out of a dream. I used to listen to music every day. When I had some money, I walked to HMV in Portsmouth, and I bought 2 albums. The first one was The Four Seasons by Vivaldi, which I played every day. And I love opera. I love classic. See, a lot of us aren't what everybody tells us we are. We are so much more than that. And in a way, coming away from Oxford, coming away from the negativity, oh, you're just going to be a heroin addict, you're going to get pregnant, you're just... Blah, blah, blah. Coming away from all that actually gave me space to spend time dreaming about who I wanted to be. And children don't get that. So I could create my own identity. I had the blueprint, it was developing, but I now had time to be absolutely, authentically, genuinely who I wanted to be. What I didn't have was any money, but money and traction. So I was this young kid just roaming around, becoming a bit of a philosopher, I guess, and seeing how the world worked, trusting my intuition, and making my way. I was too young to go to art school, which is where I desperately wanted to go, so I had to fill in 2 years. And I filled that time by making things happen and by spending time with myself. And I still love my own company. And this is something else. So those of us from care who have all that crap, if we are comfortable in our own company, if we have an environment that is okay to do that. I had a really shitty little bed sit, but it had a lock on the door, so I was okay. Learn who you are. Decide what your dream is. And it is a dream. It can't be anything else. I suppose we were manifesting or whatever, but decide what it is. Listen to what you urgently want to do. Every day I urgently want to do something creative. And if I miss days where I can't, I feel like something's not right. So I think in a way, I realized that actually what was happening to me was a privilege. Because I didn't know any 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, which is the time I had to do this, who could make money to live off. I didn't need much and have time to travel. And I'm talking about traveling, catching the coach to London. I'd go into the Tate on my own, and I would go and do this on my own. I became completely independent. But I had time to learn to cook. I had time to learn to cook the food. I remember buying a cookbook at a car boot called Curry in a Hurry, which was, basically vegetarian recipes for people who are interested in curry. And I bought myself a car boot, a dictionary, and a thesaurus, and I gave myself a school curriculum every day. I put myself through my own home education system. I listened to Radio 4, The World at One, with Brian Redhead every lunchtime when he was on, and Woman's Hour every afternoon for my understanding of feminism. I moved to everything that I felt could enable me to have the life I wanted, which was a creative life, an intelligent life, and a life where I had my own agency and autonomy. That's what I wanted, but I didn't know that's what I was doing.
Kind of amazing, but also, isn't it funny? Those, as terrible as your childhood was, you had that bit of luck that you were given the drawing, a bit of luck that you were in Oxford, and you could go to art galleries,
Yeah.
and then something innate in you that just knew that you had a way out, and you had a freedom and of sorts because you had not a lot of parental expectations, did you?
No.
And then you've gone on and it's remarkable how people can overcome adversity and
Okay.
young adversity, and I see it in our homes. It is really difficult, but do we give our kids enough aspiration? And that's the story I hear from all these care leavers, is they were told, you've been pregnant, you've been a heroin addict, you're not going to be anything. And obviously, while that's not said explicitly, we're not expecting any of the kids in our homes to go off and write 15 books and become an author and an advocate and be on, government panels talking about what they're going to do. And I love these stories, saying, how do we create more aspiration? And I don't have the answer, unfortunately.
It's a combination of, well, you let it happen. You create space for it to happen, and it's by osmosis. You see, I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I just felt what I didn't want to do. So it was a kind of diagnostic process. So I'd meet people. I think having the opportunity to meet people who are interesting. So in a lot of homes and in foster homes, residential and foster homes, do do children get access to people that are more than, that offer a different perspective, that challenge them, that talk to them at a level which assumes they're already there? So I spoke to people that never knew I was from that, but they didn't know I was living in a little filthy bedsit. It wasn't, it was immaculate because it was mine. They didn't know that. I never told them that. So therefore, my identity never interrupted the narrative I was having with a person that I admired, that I felt I was learning from, and that might have been somebody sitting next to me in the library. Libraries. I was in the library every other day, and it was a 3-mile walk and 3 miles back. But I was there pulling books off shelves at random, just discovering. I think what we do to children is we take that natural curiosity, and when you are come from trauma, you kind of have a really good sense of curiosity because you are in survival mode. I and people see that as a negative thing. They go, oh, they're very heightened. My heightened radar, my heightened kind of awareness is why I do what I do. It's why I am good at what I do, because I know who not to talk to. I'm quite good at thinking, well, they're just going to waste my time, or they're going to be negative. And when, sometimes I get it wrong and I think, okay, but I think it's, we dumb down all the assets that our children in care have because we see them as negative. We haven't learned to flip them. The amount of times I hear, even now, social workers, residential workers describe children, particularly girls, as manipulative, as controlling. I might have been described that. What I was doing was protecting myself from their, I didn't want to hear it. We also keep trying to shove young people into the wrong place because of our own insurance, our policies, our belief systems, our bias, our we don't let them breathe. And I don't think I would be doing everything I'm doing. Because people do say to me, oh, imagine, Louise, if you'd had the support of a family, if you'd had the funding, what you could have achieved. I'm thinking, well, it's not even worth thinking about because it wasn't my story. My story.
Actually, if you feel, Louise, you have achieved quite a lot. You can't be too. Don't go, wow, I could achieve so much more. You've achieved a hell of a lot, but yeah, that's your story, and who knows what would have happened because your trauma created resilience, it created bravery, it created a need that may not have been. I mean, we can't ponder it because it's not the path. It's not what happened.
No, it's no point in even thinking about it. I
But
have
there's
no
this
control it.
idea in the homes is how do we instill the idea that they're not, because we've got mainly girls, they're not just going to be pregnant as soon as they leave, or they might go and do be a nail beautician or something. And it's very, very difficult these days, I think, because we are fighting with the internet
You
and
are.
all the messages that are being put out there. But hopefully the more stories of, so I feel like care leavers are getting a much bigger voice now and saying we can do it. We can go on and be hugely successful
Yeah.
against the adversity and all the resilience.
I
Um,
think,
I, I would love to talk about, you spent 5 years developing a training program around the nervous system because, again, my experience, and I'm not even in the homes very often, I found it, I'm not going to say traumatic because that's too much, but it's upsetting hearing the stories. I've been in a conference recently and there was 5 speakers and every single one of them was like a sucker punch of me not finding out about how tough the care industry is and what people have been through and all the things around it. So for the people working in the homes, they're then needing to co-regulate with the kids. They've got all their trauma. A lot of people who work in homes are these beautiful, empathetic, kind caregivers who a lot of them have come from their trauma. So this whole your nervous system. And then we live in this world that's just so blooming busy. So tell me about the training program.
yes, well, it has taken 5 years to develop. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. But it was a bit of an experiment, and I love experiments. So I see how it started was in lockdown. One of my children had been ruthlessly bullied at school to the point where they were ill, and their sadness. It was in the room above where I'm sitting now. I'm in my studio. Was their bedroom. And their sadness and their despair kind of rained on me, you see. And I, as the adult, I wanted to make this better. You want to make this better. You want them to know that you not that you just care, that you want to give them the solutions, don't you? You want to stop it. You want it all to be lovely,
Yeah.
but you can't because it's in there. So I learned very quickly that the best thing I can do was to try and honor them as a human being there and then, and I also needed to find a way of empowering them in their own way, in their own identity, at a level which wasn't complicated. Now, as an artist, I'm obsessed with colour. I've spent years researching colour and what that means, not just because I used to teach fashion, I also used to teach fine art, but not just what that means in terms of how we feel or what it represents in an environment or how it's used in marketing, but what it represents in our nervous system as well. Because I'd seen and I started really getting into the nervous system, and I kept looking at pictures of these, those sort of anatomical drawings of men with a nervous system, and I couldn't see any children. I couldn't see any women. Maybe women don't have nervous systems, but it
They
was,
don't get medical research either, do they?
and it's slightly different. Our nervous systems, it reacts differently. So I became very interested in the nervous system. So I started illustrating a story to try and make sense of it. And then the story developed and developed, and I started doing more and more research and asking lots and lots of my children how that's in my charity and in my home. I have 4 young people with me all the time. Well, not all the time, they do go out. But I had 4 young people that I could observe and ask how they feel and check. And myself. And I watched how, and I attended a lot of foster care, and I was delivering training in residential settings as well. And I really began to listen to how other people were delivering training. And when I was teaching, I was a university lecturer, teacher. I loved teaching for over 20 years. And I became, well, I was the chair of the curriculum and pedagogy committee for the university. But I became incredibly fascinated on how we learn and how we absorb information and what we retain, because everyone is different. But what is the point of delivering information if no one's going to walk away with it and do something with it? If it's just dead information? So I'm quite theatrical, and when I was an art student, I used to do quite a lot of installation work, and I love music, and I think what I noticed in the delivery, and as a foster carer, in the delivery of training, they miss out the education bit. They just train you. But you can't train someone unless you have the understanding, the framework and the structure of the knowledge. Otherwise it's pointless. So I spent time learning what was being delivered, how people were holding that information and how it was being used. And I realized that it was basically, it's very, for what you deliver, it's very minimal what people walk away with. So I created a education training. It's a performance. I use art, I use sound, music, colour, and I work with the amazing Sally Ann Tommy, who is a renowned trauma awareness trainer, educator, and has done prolific work. And I said to her after, my husband actually went to one of her training sessions, and he said, I just sat there crying. She was so brilliant. So I met her, and she came to one of my deliveries, and she cried because I'm very good at, I can bring them up, put them there, bring them up. And I said, do you want to join me on this crazy idea I have of creating a performance so that people remember it? So we put together, it was literally like building a play, a production. So we have used colour and abstractions, and we use a narrative, we use sound. So the first bit is we literally take people through their own nervous systems, because what I learned with all the training that we were like skills to foster and all the stuff that was I could see happening in the residential, we were always doing to the young people. We were doing to them. It's like we didn't exist. Like we don't even have a reaction to them. And when we were talking, a lot of people were talking about de-escalation and blah, 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 and that made me very anxious. So we created this training which is based on colour and understanding your own nervous system. And it's called the 9 colours of the nervous system, because after 5 years, I've nailed it down to 5 colours. And the main colour is brown, because the main colour is where we regulate, where we help each other. No one can expect to help anyone if you're in a crisis yourself. If your nervous system is reacting because of who you are and your own experiences, you're never able to help someone else. You just won't. So we've created this whole rhythm where it's so easy to be part of, to remember. All you have to do is remember the colours, because you think they're in red. Where am I? I'm checking, where am I? I'm in grey. This is the order. How do I bring us both to brown? When we brought you both to brown, then we go to green, which is where we feel better, and then we go to yellow, which is where we feel good. But the interesting thing, this is a constant, because none of us are happy all the time. And this is what we need to remember. We have an expectation which is unrealistic on young people, where we go, we want you to feel good, No one feels good all the time.
Yeah, I've got twin boys who are 23, and we've great relationship. I'm a single mum, and the whole thing is like we're not happy all the time. And I think this is part of the problem, is that we're told we're going to be happy all the time, especially in care, because the residential workers are coming in and they know it's their job and they're doing a great job, but kind of constantly
Yeah,
we've got to have fun. I think there's that whole thing around fun, and fun and happy and peaceful are quite different things. And I
very.
think there's quite a lot around fun, which is actually
Fleeting.
quite hard work sometimes, isn't it? It's fleeting, and
It's
the
not,
world is so
and
complicated.
that is the expectation, and we have it on foster carers, we have it on social workers, and we want our children to be happy. What do we mean by that? The world isn't happy. We have moments, and when I did the research, I read and I read and I read and I read and I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked and I inhaled and I inhaled, and I have 9 colours. Pink is our innocence when we were in that state of unawareness, when we were just being. That is the smallest colour. The happiness is the smallest colour. We spend a lot of time feeling red, feeling grey, feeling blue. Why are we called blue? Why is blue? Blue is blue because we feel blue. This is our state. If we embrace and accept our state, we can then get a rhythm with those around us. So we're all kind of understanding, oh, they're in green. Great. They're in green. I want to feel that. So I'm going to move towards them. They're in red. How do I get them to come out of red, which is red is their alert, they feel that they're going to crash, black is crashing. The red is alarms, it's all the things you expect red. How do I get them out of the red? I can't just bring them to happy. I have to wind this through. It won't take long. And how we do that sometimes is we do nothing. And when you are paid as a foster carer or a residential worker, the expectation is because you are earning money and because you have done your training that you have to do something. And when you do something and you are not authentically in your state, so when you are, you think, oh, as a child, oh, they're acting out, which I hear a lot, which really bugs me. They're acting out. You're actually quite nervous because it's unpredictable, it's scary. So you're acting out as well, but you just haven't named it. And then you clash, and then the child gets it because they're the ones that were acting out. You were just trying to manage, but you're acting out too because you're not being authentic, because you're scared. So your fear, your anger is actually clashing totally with their fear and their anger, but in different places. So if you learn to recognize that they're in fear and anger, that you need to bring them into the brown, bring them, and we teach you how to do that, quite quickly we slow down, we regulate, you get them to the point where they go, oh, I feel better, I feel like me again. And then you bring them to a calm, then you hopefully they find a little bit of happiness, and something's going to happen again because that's life. But we know how to deal with it. So we can only help our children and young people if we understand our own nervous systems and how to make us all coordinate.
And I do kind of see that in the homes. This kind of idea of kind of fun, and and it's because we've got people who want to do things, and like you said, sometimes doing very little can be more effective than doing too much. And bringing that calm, which is easier said than done, because we try playfulness and we try curiosity and we try to distract them, and actually it is just about that regulation, and it's really tough being in the homes all the time. Like it's an unbelievably difficult job.
It's hard. It's hard. And you've got girls, and I worked in a residential home just for girls, and they're told the expectation is that they are sisters. The expectation is that they support each other. They might not even like each other.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
We try and have meals together and that, but no, they're all walking their own path, and there's not that.
It's
It can be like a family, but it's not a family. It's a community, not a
It's
family.
not a
I think.
family. That's really good because it really makes me nervous when it's like, I remember being told I was going into foster care and stay with this family, and I didn't even like my own family, my adopted
Mm.
family, and I was going to be put with another family that I didn't want to like. And the girls I worked with my charity say that they are told that they're going to be sisters, that they belong to a family.
It's still going on now.
But it should not be going on because the very last thing they need is another version of a family until they know who they are. So they're put into a version of a family which they then carry through from their own version of a family which has failed them and got them into care. Then they're told that they're going to be in this artificial family with all these weird, an artificial family. And there was one residential home that was so, some of them are warehouses, aren't they? That had such a high staff turnover that if they had attached themselves, that staff had gone anyway. So you
Mm.
kind of, it's a very, it's a very scary world for children. And what I find, what saddens me is it's for children in care. It's such a postcode lottery to end up with the really good foster carers or the really good residential home.
But I did a podcast with Chelsea, my MD, and she said that the residential home can be a family. But I actually think we use the word family, but I think we meant community.
I think you're
And
right.
really interesting, you're saying they don't need another family because the family they came from wasn't great. They don't need a family. But what it is, I think family is associated with nuclear family, with brother that you're
Yeah,
totally, but actually the whole idea it takes a village, and that's sort of what we do. Is like we're all a team, almost a
yeah,
community, supporting these kids, not saying the girls don't all have to get on. We try and do things together. If they do, that's amazing. But there's never, we're not forcing them to be sisters, if you like.
yeah,
But yeah, we use the word family, but your take on it's really interesting because what we mean is community.
yeah.
We mean a village for our kids. All these different people that come and work there, and we're doing so much work on retention because it's really tough. But
Yeah.
actually, our kids need the regular people, don't they, turning up
And they
and
need
not
to
leaving.
and they need to attach to adults and not be punished for that attachment. And again, that's something I've heard from so many of the girls in my charity is that when they naturally attach to a member of staff, they're then told that they're spending too much time with that member of staff, and that is a punishment. If they attach, they attach. We all do it, but
Yeah.
the attach, and I think that. There are in residential. I mean, what really scares me about residential is the amount popping up there unregulated and unregistered, because this is deep.
They're actually illegal, but then it takes 18 months to get an officer
I know,
regulated home. And there's lots of homes doing really great stuff.
I
Because
know,
I find there's people who are in it for the money, and there's people who really want to make a difference. And the people I come across, I think, are the good ones because they're the ones at the conferences, they're the ones reaching out, they're the ones doing the great stuff. But the unregulated, we said we weren't going to get political, Louise.
I think more emotional.
They're trying to stop that so much. But that's quite frightening, I
It's
think.
very frightening. You see, but in this, are the girls. Now, one of my foster children that left at 13, then went into 8 residential homes until she was 16, then in supported living. She went in 8 across the country, some unregulated, some regulated. People don't think about that from the child's experience. So they don't know the functions, the business arrangements of a home. It's a residential home. They don't know the paperwork attached to that place. All they know is what they experience at a very personal level. And then when they find out later, as this young woman who's come back in my life in her mid-20s has found out, is that she was in unregistered and unregulated homes. She didn't know. She is now so angry that she didn't matter enough for her local authority to put her in somewhere which was safe. The paperwork was safe. It meant that the children want to live in regulated, registered residential homes. When they realise that they're in the other, what does that say about what you think about them?
You weren't working enough. We just stuck you in unregulated with a load of bouncers, effectively, because
Or
that's what it is.
ex forces
Not,
people?
yeah, and but I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because if these children have got really challenging behaviours, and the council, I mean, we took a child that was meant to come for us for 2 weeks, and the council rang up and said she's been landed at our offices at 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and the whole team, my SLT were amazing, stopped everything, dropped everything, created a space, and that child was with us within 4 hours. We'd wanted to do a whole 2-week, 3-week transition, and then you think the social worker has been working hard all week. What are we going to do with this child? And I think that's where it gets so scary. And we were fortunate that we were in a place, and I had a team that moved heaven and earth and made it happen. And the child was with us in 4 hours.
But you see, the children, I get this a lot, and when I work with young women from my charity, and when we foster, you know, people keep talking about their behaviour. It's not behaviour; it's their nervous system. Everything is their nervous system. If they, and I know this myself, I mean, I remember being, I don't know, 12, 13, after being, you know, helpful Hattie, Miss, can I help you? Can I please like me? Please like me. My hormones just went for it. And it was one thing too much. And I just remember becoming very violent towards some dustbins and some climbing clematis and ripping everything and kicking everything over. That felt good. That felt powerful. That felt, for the first time in my life, I had a little bit of control. If you feel that your control is when you are to the rest of the world being challenging, you're going to stay there, aren't you? When you feel control, when you are
Yeah.
trusted, when you are given space, if you find new control, when people go, let you, don't say, I trust you, you behave towards them. Because behavior is theatre. The nervous system is real. Our behavior is theatre. And the amount of young people that I have worked with, that they have done something outrageous, and they look at me and wink because they know that I know.
You know what it feels like
Yeah,
to
I know
just.
and I know that it's theatre. And when you watch, I mean, I remember looking after one child who, you know, the social workers were terrified of him, absolutely terrified. And he had the power. It was the only power he had. I have other children that refuse to eat because it's their power, it's their control. If every part of your life has been pulled apart from you, if you've left your family, no matter how awful we think those families are, you have been removed by someone else's authority and decision that your family is not good enough and you're going somewhere else. When you are a child in care, the rest of the world looks at you like you are the problem. That's why we have so many issues trying to recruit good people, because people come in with a bias that you're from care. So therefore you've been sexually abused, or you're dangerous because you've been sexually abused, because you're going to sexually abuse everything and everyone, that you're going to be really difficult, really awful. When I taught at the university, I taught for over 20 years, I never told one of my colleagues ever, no, hardly any of my friends, that I was from the care system, because I know what they would have done. When I left and I wrote my book, I remember one of the greatest pleasures I had was them reading it and finding out. Because they would have just judged me. They would have judged me. And that's what we do to the children. Even when you think you're not, you do. So that the care workers who come into, and I see this again and again and again, that the great people like yourself who, you know, you're not there 24/7. You're not in those spaces. So you don't know what bias and judgment are going in to those young people.
And I think even good people, we all have biases.
Yeah,
I
you
think,
do.
you know, on all the spectrums, not just about people in care, because, you know, I'm 50 something years old. I've been taught lots and lots of biases through my life, and
Yeah,
you have to do work to untrain that bias.
yeah.
And if you've been a frontline worker and you have been punched in the head and you've seen those behaviours and that nervous system, and it's really hurt you and it's given your triggers. But I think understanding that we have inherent biases because we've lived in a world that's given us a whole load of prejudgments that we plug and play, don't
We
we? Was that
also,
all it?
we also, as I think in the Western world or in what I call the privileged world, we do like to feel better than other people. So having children who are desperate, and you can feel their desperation. Some people have sheer compassion with that, and some people find power with that. And we don't know what's going on in other people's heads, which is why when you learn your own nervous system and you understand it, you can decide for yourself who you are. And that exposes yourself to yourself, and you either think that's who I am, I don't like it, I'm gonna adjust bits, or you think, oh, I'm all right, actually I am all right, because my nervous system, where do I like to be? Where am I in my nervous system? Because I am my nervous system. And we keep talking about behavior, but I've met some really violent, terrifying people in my life. Both I used to run with drug dealers, and I've done the whole lot. But when you pull away from that, it's their nervous system, it's their fear, it's their culture, it's their bias, and it's that kind of, people can say, oh, you need to be empathetic, you need to be, we need empathy and empathy. Every child abuser I know of has brilliant empathy. That's how they get to the children. What we need is a really good dose, a dollop of genuine compassion. I am a big fan of compassion and empathy in equal measures, because you need to be able to tune in, but you also need the compassion. And the compassion somehow teaches you when you read the nervous system and you stop looking at the behavior, you go, oh my God, I just saw myself in that. And then you connect. But it's I get
When you were saying about smashing up the dustbins and the tomatoes, whatever it was, that trigger. I can't even remember the memory, but I remember feeling angry and doing something physically powerful made me feel better.
yeah.
And I did say when I first got home, I thought, they're a bit like a luxury prison. And no wonder we had two girls who were running away quite a lot. We've made quite a few changes around trusting the kids, and they're allowed to go up to high street, all very risk assessed and all done very, very properly, but giving them some autonomy and some agency. And they're in, and I thought, well, no wonder they're running away, because I'd probably run away too. And
Exactly.
And actually, we need to give them that chance to say, no, I'm okay. And they come back to us. They come back to us because they know it's safe and it's loving and it's kind. But if we keep them there, it's not. It becomes a prison, doesn't it? And that's something they've got to break free from.
Yeah.
But it was interesting when you were saying that sense of being physically strong is a power, isn't it? And it's the one thing, they've got some power. When they do smash the house up or whatever, it's like, it probably felt really, really good.
But why aren't we providing, particularly for girls, we still have that ridiculous idea that we aren't violent, we aren't physical, we aren't powerful. Now, one of the best days of my life as a child was when I was at middle school. We had this very, they used to say she was butch, but she's a new PE teacher, clearly a lesbian, clearly brilliant. And she did something, rather than us standing around in the drizzle in playing netball, where only about 3 people play netball, the rest of us just stand around, don't we? Goalkeeper, goal attack, goal this, goal defence, goal that. Everyone's just sort of like standing around in the cold. She said, let's play rugby. And we're like, oh, the boys play rugby. So we went charging up on the field, and every one of us, any of us that stayed in contact, still remember this day. We'd been the girls where, oh, that's not very ladylike. Oh, that's not very, that's not very. We played rugby. We really got dirty. We were violent. We were kicking ass. We were after that ball. We were from guttural noises. We were. And then that was stopped because I remember his name, Mr. Cetron, who was already 120 at the time, who's probably very dead now, said that's not what girls do. So we were never allowed to do it again because the male teachers banned it. But it was the biggest release we have. Now, when I work with my girls, I have self-defense. I have a woman comes in who does self-defense, and she teaches them boxing, kickboxing, not just the physical self-defense, but emotional self-defense. And the girls, just love it.
Mm.
They're punching and they're kicking. And why aren't we giving girls these spaces to go rip things up? I remember having so many surges of anger, of all that pain and hurt. A little wasn't going to cut it for me. I had to be violent because it had been the world had been violent to me. Where does that go? So I love the fact, I mean, I am a big fan of dancing. I'm not a great dancer, but I worked out that I spent most of my teens, 20s, probably early 30s in nightclubs dancing. Not to
Mm-hmm.
meet boys or men, but to dance, like really properly dance with abandon and just dance. And with the girls, we have these like dance sessions where we go for it. What are we meant to do with all that physical stuff? Yeah,
I was really big into sport. I grew up on a farm in New Zealand, and actually women were allowed to be more sporty. And I think we've got that now. But actually, being good at sport for women is one of the biggest, to become a CEO, like so to do well in business, as women that learned their physical power from a
yeah,
younger age, like through sport. And I struggle with it because there's so much emphasis on makeup and nails and hair and eyelashes. And I'm like, no, finding your physical power and having that release. And you say dancing in nightclubs where you're in a, again, back to community and village and music. And I don't know the answer. I mean, I think there's some amazing things going on with female women in sport, like you think of the rugby team, the football team. But how do we get that for our girls in care? That is just even more important, I think,
it's
is to
essential.
know what their physical power is and how they can get
I think
regulate their nervous system.
sport and arts have been cut from. And if you're in care, you've
Mm-hmm.
often missed even more than anyone else because they still have in the national curriculum or in those places called schools, they punish you by removing the stuff that you enjoy. So if you enjoy creativity, see, I think creativity and sport are like this.
Yeah.
And some of the most brilliant people I know think creatively and are sporty. I have actually the speakers that come in to talk to the girls are sports people, motivators.
Brilliant. Yeah. And
Keep
understand
going,
this.
keep
Try
going.
hard, and sometimes you win and sometimes you fail, but you feel good about the
Philosophy of
journey. I think
life.
is what. Yeah,
And that is
yeah.
exactly the same in the arts, but in sports that you can see it.
And you get flow too, don't you? You get to lose yourself when you're
Yeah.
doing art or doing. I play tennis. You're an artist. I'm probably not as good at art or writing books as you are. I play tennis, but it's that thing. It's that
You
freedom.
zone,
It's
don't
the
you? You
physical. Yeah,
zone.
yeah.
And why
And it's just
aren't
that
our
little
children
green ball.
zoning? Because when you zone, your brain goes back to good, goes back to. So we need to give them opportunity to zone out. That's what dancing does to me. I mean, I'm a terrible dancer, but I think I'm great in my head, and I go for it.
We've got schools attached to our homes, and we're doing some changes there. Like these kids need to regulate their nervous system through the arts, through sport, before they sit down. English and maths are obviously important, but actually regulating them through forest schools, through sport, through outdoors, through fresh air, and through art
Yeah,
is going to be more helpful than them getting an A in GCSE maths or English.
totally, totally. They got the rest
Um,
of their lives to do that.
we could talk for about 5 hours, Louise. I
Whoa.
think we might. I think we've got so many things. It's been amazing, and there's. I can't wait to actually offline. We're looking a bit more around your regulation and the nervous system because that is fascinating, and I love that idea that it's focusing back on the person who is doing the regulating to help regulate someone who isn't in a great space. Um, have you got one top tip, one thing you'd like to say to any of the people working with these kids? Because you were one of those kids who got to their teens and said, "Wow, this life is tough." What would you say about? What would you like to say to someone who's working with kids in care?
The truth will always do. The truth will always do. You don't have to be brutal, and you don't have to sugarcoat it, but the truth will always do. Yes, you've had a shit time. Yes, I'm really sad about that. But come on, we got today and tomorrow. Let's not keep looking back. You are who you want to be.
You know, you're the second person this week who's over the age of 50 who's said a similar thing, and I think there's a generational difference. And I know one of our girls came and she was lovely, and I went, "Hey," her name was. I said, "I know it's pretty crappy being here, but we're going to do the best we can for you, and just tell me if there's anything you need. But I know this isn't ideal. It's just crappy being here, but please let us make." There's everyone's kind here, but I think that whole real truthfulness, which I think is actually, I'm going to finish another thing, which I got off one of the videos you're on, and you said, "I am who I am, and that's it. I'm happy with who I am. I like me. Me is okay." I love that. And if we could get every young person, but especially young women and girls, to know that I like me and me is okay, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
That's a really good place to be, isn't it? You can build on that because you're not bothered by what you think people might be thinking about you. Because when you're in care, everyone writes about you, everyone talks about you, and you can build that in your head all the time, and like it can become a paranoia. My most liberating experience was realizing that my behavior in my early 20s was a result of my childhood, and I had to change. I couldn't change my childhood, but I had to stop looking for what felt familiar. In order to do that, I had to look in the mirror and like what I saw, and I did. Yeah, it's all right. This is it. This is this is what I got. So I just sort of.
Also, you are not your trauma. Like, what happened to you, and yes, it'd be
I'm
lovely to
not
have a mum and
defined
daddy who love
by
you
my
and said,
trauma, and we must stop defining our young people by their trauma. Understand it, but give us tools to get the hell out of it. There is a whole world out there for our young people, but we need to let them get to it without containing them and holding them back with our own limitations of them, because they should not exist.
"We have to stop talking because otherwise we'll be here till midnight, Louise." I've loved this. Thank you for being unbelievably honest and sharing, and also for all the work you've done. I think is unbelievable, and for sharing and giving us beautiful insights and being so generous with your time.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Absolutely.
And we were putting all the links to the multitude of things that Louise does in the show notes. Thank you once again, and no doubt we'll be speaking soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.